Okay, so we're doing 2 different days on 9.4. So what essentially we're looking at is a quadratic formula, or quadratic. And remember when we did the putting things in standard form, and then if the degree of the monomial was a 2, it was quadratic? That's what this is talking about. So if it's like the degree 2, it's quadratic. Don't freak out, but basically if I graphed this is what it would look like. And we're not dealing with it as much today. We'll do more factoring next time. We're just doing, learning a few things about square roots and how to solve them and things like that. So, but basically what you're solving for is where they cross the x-axis. Not that that really matters, but that is what you're solving for. So a couple of things we're going to deal with is square root properties. Anytime you're dealing with something squared equaling a number, you can take the square root of each side, because remember, something squared, the way to solve it is to just take the square root. So let me just show you, and I know all of you are rolling your eyes thinking, we already know this. Well, hold up. Okay, so once it's just something squared equals a number, you can square root each side. Okay, so then it would make it x, because the square root and the square cancel each other out, equals 5. But if you look over here, a square root is just a number times itself that equals something. So remember, 5 times 5 is 25, but so is negative 5 times negative 5. So the answer is actually plus or minus, or you could separate them and put 5 and negative 5. But the lazy way is this way. Okay, so we have something squared equals a number, so we just square root both sides. So x equals plus or minus 12. Then you'll have things that aren't perfect squares. So depending on how the book says it wants it, I actually prefer that you leave it as x equals plus or minus the square root of 14, because if you don't do it that way, at some point you could have a rounding error. But if rounding is needed, like you come across some directions that say round to the nearest whatever. If you put that in your calculator, it's approximately plus or minus 3.74. Okay, and then this one is just a tiny bit different. It just involves a little bit more, but we still have something squared equals a number, so we're okay. So we'll just take the square root of both sides, so then that gets rid of your squared. So x minus 3 equals plus or minus 8. And I just left a little space, and it'll make sense in a second. So this isn't just plain x, so we need to get rid of the 3, so we'll just add it. And I'm going to add it right here. So then x equals 3 plus or minus 8. So in this instance, there's no like square root that you have to deal with. So we're just going to do the two numbers, because this is two different answers. So it's 3 plus 8 and it's 3 minus 8. So then x equals 11 and x equals negative 5. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, we're just going to try a few other things. So let's do this side first. Same thing as kind of we just did. So we'll just do the square root of both sides. So x plus 6 equals, and the square root of 81 is plus or minus 9. And we'll subtract 6, x equals negative 6 plus or minus 9. So you could do negative 6 plus 9, which is 3, and negative 6 minus 9, which is negative 15. Okay, so if you look at this one's a little different because it's not just something squared, and that's the only thing on that side. So we actually have to subtract this and get it to move over. So it's y plus 5 squared equals 21. So now it's something squared equals a number. So then I'm going to rewrite this so that it doesn't get lost. Okay, so now we do the square root of both sides. So then we have y plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 21. So we need to subtract the 5, y equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 21. And since the square root of 21 isn't a whole number, we can just leave it like that and call it good on that one. Okay, let's look at this one. So if you use that same idea from this one to this one, we need to add 3 before we can square root some sides. So now we have something squared. So now we can square root them. So a minus 8 equals plus or minus the square root of 13. So a equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 13. Okay, so then this one again is just a tiny bit different. And I know your tendency is to like distribute things or FOIL, but that will turn out really badly. So if this is being multiplied here, to get rid of it, all we have to do is divide by 4 on both sides. So then that cancels that out. So then we have m plus 1, still squared, equals 9. Well, we like when there's a perfect square here, because then we're not dealing with a square root like this. So then we square root both sides. So m plus 1 equals 3, plus or minus 3. So minus 1, m equals negative 1 plus or minus 3. And then we can get final answers. So negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. So hopefully that was enough practicing for you to do your assignment. So not a terribly long assignment. Make sure that there are 2 answers, whether and if possible, I would like you to do it like this. Give me 2 separate answers instead of this, because you can do that. Here, that's not a whole number, so you can go ahead and just leave it like this. So hopefully that makes sense.